Welcome back to another episode of Pop Culture Petri Dish, the podcast where we talk about science and science fiction, the real stuff and the fake stuff, and talk about how they, inform each other and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. You'll get it. My name is Abe Epperson. I'm one of your hosts.
And I'm Cristian Ramirez, your other host.
And usually it works that Cristian comes in with something hot and spicy, and I me likey. And so, what do you got for us today, Cristian?
Today we're going to talk about the housing of the future, like how we're going to the places that we're going to live in sci-fi, like I guess Jetson's house, anything really kind of counts. And I'm going to avoid spaceships just because, yes, people live in spaceships in a lot of sci-fi.
But they're also vessels.
But yeah, exactly. They're things that travel. So right now we're going to work on, all the stuff that if you're living on Coruscant, if you're living in the Jetsons world, if you're living on Earth in the Star Trek universe, then this is the kind of stuff that we're probably going to be looking at. And the stuff that it has relation to today.
Okay.
So so right now there's a lot of emphasis on when it comes to building houses that we think are like kind of sci-fi. There's a lot of emphasis on either doing going one of two directions, going smart houses, which is completely integrating all of our technology. And then there's the low tech houses is another direction that people are going in when it comes to like tiny houses and stuff like that. There was a professor that lived in a dumpster that he made.
that ain't one professor. That wasn't that.
He's a professor in Austin, Texas, I think. He refitted a dumpster to be like comfortable on the inside.
Right.
And they lived there for, I think 6 months. Just kind of performing that experiment to see how livable it was in that tiny enclosed space.
Where did you say this was?
In Austin, Texas.
That makes sense.
But he also like didn't, the thing that like was off-putting about it was that he didn't have like plumbing attached to it.
So he was just shitting
in a bucket.
Yeah. I said it. It makes sense.
Yes.
Fire back, Austin, Texas people. Nah. You have a lovely town.
But so a lot of this, no matter what, is going to be geared towards kind of living off the grid, being in a sustainable, self-sustaining, low carbon footprint place.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
So what are the problems we have to solve? Like, not things we have to solve before we begin. What informs the making of these buildings? Then?
A lot of the times the making of these buildings, you have to be conscious first about the kind of stuff that your impact on the environment as far as the materials that you're even going to use to build. So first off, there's the low tech ways of like recycling containers, shipping containers.
Okay.
Especially if you're close to a port city, like I live in Long Beach. There's an abundance of just empty containers that end up there at the port and nobody has anything to do with them, but they're very cheap to buy. Like you could buy one for a couple $1,000
and then insulate it.
Yeah. And then yes, you go through the process of insulating. But you already have that steel frame, which is rated for actually being shipped across the ocean and going on ships that are going across obviously waves. So they're very stable and sturdy. And you can use those. There's some really it's basically like using Legos because you're just stacking them on top of each other and they fit together perfectly because they have to. And you just have to find a piece of land and then you got to wire it, insulate it, and add windows, whatever you want to it. But that's one of the like recycling methods of doing it. There's also methods when it comes to building you can build things underground because that completely negates your need for insulation and stuff like that. You can have basically a hobbit house but obviously with walls and all that kind of stuff.
They prefer mole people.
But if you have like hillsides and stuff like that on your property, then you can build something into the hillside and you don't need to insulate it. You can add like heating and stuff like that to it if you want to. Right. But then you can also do stuff like grow a garden on top of your house, and you can grow food and stuff like that. Which obviously, when it comes to greenhousing and lowering your carbon footprint in general, the more food that you can grow yourself that you consume, the better it is for the planet, because you don't have to go out and get that food from whatever resource. And obviously that's hard in a city, but we already talked about on the food episode the fact that they're developing methods of vertical farming.
Like skyscraping.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And a lot of places, specifically right now, Singapore is said that they're determined to be the greenest city in the world. They have these things called, let me see. Oh yeah. Okay. So basically, Singapore was having a really hard time in the last like 30 years, but then they made a bunch of changes to where they're trying to go green as possible and to be the first carbon negative or carbon neutral city on the planet. So they're doing stuff like they have these things called super trees. They're part of a display at the 250-acre gardens by the bay. The high-tech structures range from 80 to 160 feet and collect solar energy to power nightly light show. So right now it's kind of just more of an art structure than it is a functional structure, but they're showing that they can do it through these things. They have a softer side too. Their trunks are vertical gardens laced with more than 150,000 living plants. So they basically are giant solar towers that are collecting energy that are also covered in plants. So like I said, as of right now, they don't power anything huge. They power a light show that they have at night, but that is the first step to getting to a point where we have buildings that are covered in solar panels that are collecting all the energy they need, that are also covered in rooftop gardens and all that kind of stuff, that are just that are essentially making little cities out of just a single building, where you can and you have goods and stuff like that you can share, and the food and stuff like that. So
okay. Yeah. So it's like urban development of sustainable, like energy and food. And stuff. Yeah. So that's, I'd imagine that like a city, just like as it is now, as like a series of houses, or like we have to build like a one small part of that, like a dome for a family. Yeah. And then just copy paste that, and that's how you make a city, right? Yeah. So how do you sustain, like, let's just take one person.
For one
like,
person.
Do people do this kind of thing where they say this is the amount of food that you need, and this is how much, like, percentage of your space needs to be allocated to food, or how you do with waste disposal? Because I know they have essentially like mulchers. That you essentially creates nitrogen rich soil from your feces, and then you use that to essentially fertilize your crops. And that's like one thing. So there's one thing about like knocking down the necessity, and there's one thing about replacing it. Because that's the true achievement of sustainable homes, is that it's like you don't need to be reliant on somewhere else. Because that's the kind of things that they're like the world of tomorrow, kind of like the Mars projects back in like the 70s, where they were like, they got people drawing like, this is what a home might look like on Mars, and it's like a dome, and like the idea is that, well, how could that actually be achieved? I mean, that's a nice little painting, but like, how would you actually make it so that it could be a closed system and you can survive for many years? Well,
a lot of the green home and the carbon neutral home technology that we're looking at right now, just for the world, is basically everything is going to be recycled. All the water that you use to drink and to like to wash dishes or to take a shower or anything like that, gray water is going to get reused to go into the toilet that it's going to flush, and then your waste is going to go into composting, and that water that is now black water is going to go into the land that you're growing food on. like that kind of stuff, to where you're reducing your water consumption by like huge factors. Obviously you still need the water, drinkable water, for all the stuff that whatever it is that you need personally to drink and to cook with.
Yeah.
But the fact that you are going to reuse all of that water to also go into your toilet, to go into watering, things like that, that reduces your consumption by like literally gallons a day.
Right.
Which, because we only drink about, you need to drink about a gallon of water is what they say. A lot of us don't, but but yeah, so that gallon then goes into all the other things that you do. But right now, all of that water is literally consumable water that we're wasting because it's going into our toilet and our shower and our sink. So like, yeah.
Yeah, we have to think about it from all angles,
Yeah.
right? We have to think about it. In an ideal world, there's a situation where you can like recycle in the same, like you have a mini recycling plant,
Yes,
essentially.
exactly.
Or something that burns up plastics or something like that. Or, you aren't just using the plastic, but you can actually like reform it to your, build your cups every few weeks or something like that, or use only things that are biodegradable. That's an interesting notion. I still don't. Has anyone ever done a closed system environmental house? Like,
there's no. I don't. Not that I'm aware of. There's not anyone that's like 100% efficient.
Right, because
that's
obviously
impossible.
oxygen.
Yeah, you need to bring in stuff from outside of the
but
system.
I'm trying to think of
system is 100%.
Cody and I playing on Minecraft, where every time we make a base,
Yeah.
it is absolutely like you could just live in the base.
Yeah.
Like, obviously there's only 3 things you need in that.
Yeah.
But it makes you start to think of like, that's why I think that they should be teaching things like Legos or even better, like Minecraft to kids, because they can develop these ideas that are like, frankly, outside of the box, kind of like how you were saying with the Hobbit hole, where there's one intelligence to like all of your surface area going underground, so that the top side is all surface area devoted to crops and stuff like that. How to make a smaller house out of this square footage, both horizontally, both in 3 dimensions, in space and in vertical.
You're thinking in 3 dimensions instead of 2.
Yeah, exactly. How you can reap the benefits of that volume. That's the kind of clever things. Like, what are some of the most other clever things that you've found in your research? Like things that maybe people don't know about.
Yeah, recently I saw a video that was talking about just a bunch of different things that are like helping the planet. And one of the technologies that it talked about was using human feces and compost and stuff like that to make charcoal, essentially. It gets burned, so all the bacteria is out of it, but then you end up with little briquettes, basically, that you can use to cook with, and it doesn't have any smell. There's nothing wrong with it. You're taking everything except for the carbon out of it, and then once you burn it to make food or whatever, but they've used it to eat off of too. It's just the idea that it's poop is going to bother some people.
Yeah, just like in the last episode it was bugs. It's just really weird that we jump from like, think about how we can use poop, because it's going to be there. It's like, it's undeniable. There will be poop.
A less popular Daniel Day-Lewis
and like
movie.
people, well, he was an oil man.
The sequel to There Will Be Blood.
It does intrigue me that the scientists are thinking about like, they jump real quick from like, how can we solve the poop problem, to like, everything can be poop. You can eat off this poop. You can cook off this poop. You can just put the poop in your eyes. Why would I do any of that? Like, there's a better, I don't have to cook off of poop, but I guess that is, if it doesn't smell and it's like,
it's charcoal briquettes.
I mean, it's the same. It's Kevin Costner in Waterworld drinking his own piss. It's like, all right, if the science backs it up, there's that that meme now that it's it's like this whole Rube Goldberg machine, and it's Bill Gates because he developed this in Africa, these plants that, or not like these water generation plants that are you just put in like sewer water.
Yeah.
And you can just piss right in it. And then it goes through a bunch of processes that are like solar and wind power design. And you get potable water. Yeah. And then there's a shot of him with this thing behind him, and he's just drinking it. And then he like smiles and nods like, that's good water. And it's because it's supposed to be like an ad for look at all the cool things that we're developing. But he's just like, Bill Gates is... This is a weird flex right now. Really weird flex.
But yeah, there's other just like small low tech ideas. Like I saw a thing that's basically a pencil sharpener that you like, one of the little hand ones that you will put plastic bottles and stuff like that into, and then you unravel them, and it ends up making a plastic string out of it, which you can then use to do whatever your string needs are at the time. But it's also high tensile strength because it's made out of the plastic from the bottles. So
you could become Spider-Man. That's what I'm getting at, is like, can you become Spider-Man?
You can try.
Well, you can definitely tie up, people and get their secrets.
That's true.
That's another sustainability thing that give me your food. I tied you up. You're in my bunker now. It's sustainable.
Well, okay, but yeah, they've also developed a lot of like the power generation stuff as far as solar roof tiles. And they have solar tiles that you can attach to any surface. You can make them white if you want to. It doesn't have to be black. It just obviously is less efficient than what you think of the stereotypical solar tiles are. And obviously in a place like California, we could generate a ton of energy by doing that. Germany, I think, made the commitment to go completely renewable by 2030. And they, for the first time, it was a couple of years ago, but the first time they powered their entire country for one day on renewable energy. And that's a big deal. Like, just showing that they can do that at all. And then obviously they went back the next day because that's super taxing. But stuff like the what's it called? The Tesla Powerwall. I can't remember which one.
Yeah, I can't remember the name. But yeah, it's just batteries. Yeah. You can go completely off grid.
Yeah. And so using stuff like that along with the little wind, you can attach wind turbines to pretty much anything because you don't have to make them in a big pinwheel formation anymore. They can be just a small spiral that actually acts more efficiently. And you can use turbines like that are similar shapes. If you live near water, you can put that in there. And it's just turning a turbine, which is going to be generating power for your house. And these are all just different ways of solving the power problem, generally, is the biggest thing. So obviously in the desert, that's going to be solar, and wind is going to be the easiest way to do that.
Yeah, they tried orphan on a bicycle power, but with solar and wind seemed to test better in groups.
Yes.
Kind of like Snowpiercer. Like, it's weird to me that we're totally like, oh, it's horrifying. He's putting little kids in there and they're like running the engine. But it's basically just like, say you're just making little orphan hamsters.
Yeah.
Like just running on the wheel, baby. And then when they get all tired out, you just throw them in to the mulcher. Ed Harris. Yeah, but obviously I'm making light of a very serious thing because that's what I do with like pain. But yeah, like we were talking about that in the climate change one, where it's surprising to know how much like solar and wind power constitutes the Californian power grid. It's like already here. Yeah. People still think it's this little tiny thing of like, but in the end of the day, we're only at like what, 10%? Like we have to stick around with fossil fuels. It's like, no, man. Fossil fuels are kind of going, they're going the way of the dinosaur, like the oils that they mine. But yeah, the solar and wind. and oceans. It's like, what do they call it?
Use the tides.
Tidal generation. Which is just like these buoys out in the middle of shit that are attached to a grid that essentially use the ebb and flow, up and down motion to run a motor, much in the same way like a hamster wheel. Yep.
And that's the same thing as right now they're working on what are basically floor tiles or floorboards that harvest energy just from you walking on them. They have a tiny bit of give in them, and when you put pressure on them, it's generating power.
Yeah. So this is all about like developing a closed system, or as far as we can get to it.
Yeah.
Now there's a lot of elements to the quality of life of people that make things add lack of sustainability.
Yeah.
Stuff like transport, like you have to get in a car. Obviously there's electric cars, so you can do your best. And this isn't a call to action in terms of,
right.
Make yourself better, be more environmentally friendly. No, that's not what we're talking about. We're talking about how is that, my question is, how is that like we're attaching it from different industries right now. Like I'd say that per capita, most of America especially, just because that's what not just relevant to me, but it's what I understand and I live in. The American culture, they do see there's this overarching kind of concept about like sustainability or, environmentally friendly.
Yeah.
But they're still very much so not considering, like they consider the car industry one thing. They consider, organic or, like GMO foods another. They consider solar power another industry, when the reality is they're all the same industry. Yeah. And that's the industry of sustainability. How do you sexy that up a notch? How do you get it? Like, how do we stop thinking of it in terms of, I do eat a bunch of burgers and stuff like that, but I do have a Tesla,
right.
And that is fine and enough for a lot of people, for me as well, incremental baby steps, all that. But is there a way in which there's a better PR motivation to like sell a suite, like sell like if you live at this building, you get like a sustainable car. You get the sustainable stuff. You opt into this, essentially a commune that needs you to run as a part of it. In a lot of ways, it reminds me of that Black Mirror episode where everything is that 15 million credits, where like they are both the celebrities and they're also running on the bikes because that powers the system itself. Like, don't forget that one of your most valuable assets and resources is humans themselves doing work and stuff like that. Yeah. That's how I imagine terraforming, or not terraforming, but colonizing Mars would be like, right? Is that everyone has to spend 2 hours of their day on that tricycle because it's always got to be going. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that, I don't know how to, I guess, sexy it up, but this is a lot of this technology and integrating the sustainable technology into our lives is going to be part of the reason that we're able to get to a spacefaring society. Okay. Because when we are each individual house is basically creating power that we're all using, and we're at a carbon neutral or even super optimistic, but carbon negative state, then that is going to take away our need for fossil fuels. And of course, there's the big obstacle of fossil fuel lobby and stuff like that. But that's how we get to this society. I think basically we get to this point where we're all living sustainably on large scale numbers, that doesn't mean just individual people, but like corporations and the United States military. Like, it's once we are living in a society that is sustainable, that's when we can look at the issues of trying to conquer getting to another planet and colonizing other places, colonizing the moon, sending mining ships to Titan that can harvest all the fossil fuel, all the natural gas and oil and stuff there. Why would we do that once we don't need it anymore? But you can do that at that point. Going to different asteroids to mine iron ore and getting ice from comets and stuff like that, so we have more water. But so I think that that is the motivation for, and I think you can make it look good too. Like you can make greenhouses look really cool and sci-fi-ish, and like you have solar panels on it, or you're living in something that looks like an apartment out of Star Trek, like Kirk's apartment or whatever. Like that's how you do it. That's how you sell it to people. But yeah.
That is the longest campaign slogan for Ramirez 2020 that I've ever heard in my life. I believe in that. I believe in that message. So obviously you're going to get that bent here at this podcast. We're all drinking the Kool-Aid over here, and that Kool-Aid was made from bugs. But yeah, like I think that, so what you just gave me is you gave me more of a top-down version of it, where we change the civilization itself to be sustainable, and then we can look inward. You know, what's the woman's name who was doing like the, you know, like she's like, you get much joy from the Netflix
Marie
special.
Kondo.
Yeah. There's something to be said about figuring out inside and then doing it, but I think I think that they're both important, but you're probably right at the end of the day, because from a PR standpoint, and that's kind of why I was asking the question, there's people who just don't want to do this. You know, like there's people who will always want to be like, oh, this aesthetic looks like shit, or I don't like this. I find living here is oppressive to my, you know. And the other thing is, like, you have things like, it's super helpful when we try to use NASA as a model of closed systems. But remember, just like I said earlier when I was talking about one of the best commodities of that sustainability is having someone there, using the human as a sustainable element. It is being fed by, but it is also putting back into the system, so that it's a crucial part of that loop existing. Now, when you have able-bodied, smart astronauts to work with who can run on or like essentially pedal on a bicycle, that's one thing. But if you have someone who isn't as able-bodied, maybe that doesn't work for them, that model. So now we have to start thinking about in terms of like, how do we get, if we truly want to be sustainable, is I guess what I'm getting at, we're going to have to ensure that everyone is a part of that process in some extent. And as we all run into the problem of like, not all humans, there's many shapes and sizes and abilities. So how do we make those all work for us? I think is a powerful part of their PR campaign, because if they don't address it, there's going to be people who are very unhappy with the way in which they could, like that, going back to Star Trek, as we always do in this podcast, in Star Trek, when they're utopia, the assumption, what if someone just fucking hated space? Are they just like, I fucking hate space. I don't want to go up in space. You know, like it's the worst thing. I think it's bad. It's bad that we're explorers. We're constantly, there's a case for it too. Like the Wolf 395 or whatever it was, like straight up, we went out there and then we brought back the Borg and they killed like most of our like Federation, and everything was devoted to that. So in that same sustainability, if something goes wrong on not your side, you might have the propensity to blame those people and be like, I'm not a part of the problem, I'm just doing my thing. And you have now made my life worse because you didn't do your thing correctly. And so if that's true, how do you stumble past that PR perspective of getting people to want to be a part of like Team Human in the way that someone has drafted up, saying this is what Team Human is. And if it doesn't self-define, like if you don't define that version of self-human, not saying that you don't identify with being human, but someone's version of it, isn't that a form of coercion?
Sure. I think the best way to sell sustainability to other people is probably the people that are resistant to it, probably focusing on the fact that the more sustainable that we each individually live, that means we have to spend less time working. We have to spend less time on just struggling to survive. Because exactly. Because that is also the goal of sustainability. It's not just to make sure that we have a better impact on the planet. No, it's so that you individually don't have to work as much to just survive, so that you can stay home and just, I mean, you can devote 10 hours a week to programming or whatever it is, to your basic duties in this society, and then devote the rest of the time to art, to whatever it is that you want to do, to philosophy, to, if you want to build things, then you can build them on your own.
Calling kids noobs on Counter-Strike.
Sure. Yeah. And I think that's a good trade-off, to go, okay, you're going to have to live in a place, because it's not even an individual person necessarily doing anything. Right. Once we make it the societal norm that these are the kinds of houses and these are the kinds of places that we live in, people are going to live in them. So I don't think that's going to matter as much as far as selling the individual person on it. I think selling the economic impact and the economic importance of it is going to be the more important part, because we don't think about the house that we live in right now and what it's made out of. So why would we start thinking about it just because there's solar panels on it? You know what I mean?
Depends on if you're an architect. But yeah, that's a valid point. That's a valid point. It's out of sight, out of mind for most people. Yeah.
Just the floor that we stand on right now, or that people stand on, they won't think about the fact that it's also helping to power their home.
I mean, I don't even want to think about what's under there, because there's probably like a spider.
That's true.
There's probably a lot of spiders, but I mean like a really big one. Like an 8-foot-long spider under my house. I dream about it. I dream about it. It's probably going to take me over. And it's like, no, I'm just doing a podcast. I'm just doing a bit where it's just me talking with my spider friends. No. Yeah. But like, yeah, you need to think about like, what is the utility of a wall? What is the utility of a ground?
And we're just, no, but it's true. And that's what we're doing with a lot of sustainable technology. I think the people that are working on it right now are pretty smart in that they are taking things that don't even occur to us. And they're making something out of it that will help us, that'll help power the space that where we live.
It's kind of a wonderful thing about the symbiosis of many industries, or rather they're thinking about how the industries branch into each other. Because for example, I'm like, man, there's got to be a cool way to like figure out, like you said, how to make like panels under your ground like be like streamlined, or your ceiling being for crops, or for solar panels or something like that, or like at the top of your roof, I should say. But I'm like, I shouldn't be the guy who determines that, because I don't know that.
Right.
But what I can do is talk about it on a podcast and make poop jokes. And maybe someone will be like, oh yeah.
Yeah, I do think that a lot of it has to do with us voting in ways that are going to change the industries that operate already.
But there will be many industries, and I'm not just talking about like oil jobs. There'll be industries that will probably disappear with the creation of a new industry, which is just specifically focused on the sustainability of like the power grid. Like there's still power jobs, but like everyone's doing a little bit of the power jobs. It's like crowdsourced. We're seeing that on the internet because we realize that the power of a click is monetizable. And, things like not just from an economic standpoint, but like the power of a voice, the power of like political agendas going back and forth and stuff like that. How do you weaponize really like an idea? And one of the best ways to do that is to just get a bunch of people supporting it. And we see that no better than the machine that is the internet. Yeah. And it's capable of horrible things and wonderful things. But the point is, it's a very effective tool about getting someone to go to a website, read a thing, click whether or not they support it or hate it, and us getting that data and knowing exactly what what's going on under the current of human civilization at this time, or at least the people who have internet connection and go to that website. I mean, that's why Twitter is a shit show, right? Because it is exactly that. That's why Reddit's a shit show. It's trying to democratize the idea of ideas and how we interchange them. And by doing so, you create this wide dynamic of people from different backgrounds who feel like once again, because we're imperfect humans, I feel I should be the one designing the house. I want to design the house.
Yeah.
Why? Because I think I think I have a lot of good ideas.
Yeah.
Well, what are your credentials? Because this guy's credentials are better. Yes, but he's also Nazi. It's like there's so many things to consider about when we choose who are the people who are going to essentially be the tip of the spear.
Yeah.
In terms of sustainable living and the urban planning development stages of that, because we're barely in our infancy in that regard. Much less going and colonizing other planets. I just think that how do we, from once again going back to the PR perspective, how do we install in the feeling that these are the right people for the jobs? I mean, that's in the end, that's what the government is supposed to do, and there's always been mistrust of the government. By almost 50% of the population for most of this century, if not more than half people don't like the administration, and much less like, not just like the overarching, like, should we have the TSA or something like that? I'm talking about just straight up, like, you are the bad person to be in charge of determining what the Fed's, the number for inflation, taking money out of my pocket. You are the one to blame. I hate you. Like that kind of version of things has to be kind of nullified in an extent.
Yeah, that's true.
I mean, that I'm trying to, I mean, that's kind of like what you're saying, right? Because you're saying it's kind of a top-down method. Bottom up doesn't seem to work.
Yeah, there are some things that you can do some things you can say, I guess, to sell this kind of stuff. And I think a lot of it is getting away from fossil fuels makes us more secure, makes us less dependent upon foreign interests and stuff like that. In the United States, the less we depend on fossil fuels, the less of ties we have internationally that we have to worry about the price of oil and stuff and that. For our power sources, and the more power that you individually create with your home, the less you depend on the government to produce power for you so that you can live. Those kinds of things are, I think, ways that you can sell the idea of sustainable living to people that maybe would otherwise not be interested in it. Because, I mean, living off the grid, I think, is going to be probably strike a chord with some of the people that are distrustful of the government, because they can't turn off your power if you're the one that's making it.
Yeah. They can't put shit in they can't make your frogs gay if you have the frogs.
It's true.
Yeah. See, these are straight homegrown frogs. Anyway, buy my soy supplements. Jesus Christ. And the cavalcade of chaos continues. Let's talk about sci-fi for a little bit before we close this up. Yeah. What science fiction houses in particular were you thinking of when you thought of this topic?
When I did the research, I looked at Kirk's apartment was one of them.
Kirk's apartment, not his on the ship.
No, the one that he lives, his Earth apartment.
50 bars of gold plus platinum. We were talking about he had to have money, so he bought.
I guess
the motherfucker calls himself a socialist and a utopian. Turns around, just buys, and look, he's got like guns on the wall. Kirk is a libertarian.
I mean, that's not that surprising.
Yeah, Kirk is totally a libertarian.
But yeah, Kirk's place.
This is the San Francisco view over the Golden Gate Bridge and Starfleet headquarters. Jesus. And it's as seen in Star Trek II, The Wrath of Khan.
Yeah. And obviously, like, it's hard not to think about the moisture farm in Star Wars: A New Hope, and that's an example of like living in a desert, and you're just kind of, and it is pretty sustainable, I think, because they're mining their own moisture for their water and stuff like that.
That's out of necessity.
Yeah,
like the moisture farm. The idea is like, it's not like we went here to get moisture.
Yeah, exactly.
We need moisture. So
yeah, and I mean, but obviously the Star Wars universe is all interconnected in the way that they trade with each other and stuff like that.
Right. So what is Tatooine selling?
Tatooine, I think, is... I don't think Tatooine has any major resources because they're controlled. Black
market shit.
Yeah, they're
no
controlled by the Hutts. Yeah, so they're one of the quote outer rim territories and this particular planet is controlled by the Hutts.
Man, it always makes me think about world history whenever I think about different planets, because it's like if you grew up, or if you were like centuries ago, if you were in like fucking Russia versus in fucking mainland North America, you know, one guy's got it real easy. The other guy not so much. He's just like, I just fucking want to be somewhere where it's not cold. And it's like, and they come in here and they're like, they got fucking tanks and smallpox blankets. Like it's crazy how, depending on your geological and your biome, really, you get fucked over in a capitalist system. That's just that's the deal.
Yeah.
You know? And so it's like, if they have no choice, like no one wants to live on Tatooine.
Right.
No one is like, yes, Tatooine. This is where I'll set up shop and raise my many, many thirsty children. Right next to arms dealers. And, also, there's just like wandering nomadic peoples who just sometimes just like take your shit. Why? Because they can. Because no one's stopping them. Because no one wants any of their
because there's
shit.
no law there. Because it's ruled by criminals.
They're taking blankets. We're taking planets. They're taking blankets. I think we have a better feeling of who's in charge here. That's what I'm the most scared of in terms of First Contact, is that like we get our sustainable, like we're kicking ass on all the, let's say, you know, flash forward to 100, 200 years in the future, and we're like nailing it. We're almost like Star Trek or something like that. We did all the stuff and we're all living in our sustainable homes, eating our bugs, and then some other fucking alien just comes down and like, why are you doing that? Why are you like working on fixing your, you know, like planet? Why would you care? We just build a big ship, put a big gun on it, and we just like fucking take over whatever. So like that's the other thing, is we can be entirely Machiavellian, draconian about this and just straight up just be like, fucking ditch that planet. Like that's what Hitchhiker's Guide to the
you just strip mine everything.
Like, and just take it for what it is. You don't have to have, if you have no moral quandary about that, you don't have to do shit, and you can still win. In fact, if your main goal is to win and not like live amongst each other and better yourself and like, you know, make sure that we get rid of real currencies and replace them with things like, you know, personal growth, then you're probably not going to be that good in a duel. But here we are.
Yeah.
I don't know. So like, I wouldn't want to live in a Tatooine igloo.
No.
But it worked.
Yeah, I think the future in Minority Report, everything looks really cool and sleek. I don't think it's on the list, but that's
right, because it doesn't give me the vibe that it's sustainable. It gives me more of the vibe of like, here's a high-tech tenement living style.
Yeah, and there's the completely anti-sustainable ones like in the Jetsons, where they just live on basically pillars that go above the pollution whenever the pollution rises anymore.
Right. They just throw all their trash into the pollution. Just hit some diseased animal on its way down, knocks it unconscious, it dies. So
it's
there's that. So there, we're not talking about like what's cool future house. We're talking about what has sci-fi done for us to give us inspiration in our own.
Yeah,
world.
and I don't think the thing is, I don't think sci-fi has done a lot with because sci-fi has the aspect of it that is commentary on the world. There hasn't been a lot that has a future where we're living sustainably. Like
you have to look to like Waterworld kind of stuff where it's more post-apocalyptic, where they're like making it work, you know, like Firefly Serenity. It's just like, you know, pieced together. usually when you think of a house that's sustainable, you also want it seems like an easy thing where you also make it like a house versus a home.
Yeah.
You know, where you make it feel homey, kind of like the reason when I think of Firefly, I think of, they're like scrapping along. The engine is pieced together with elbow grease, but also they got like nice couches and shit.
Yeah.
You know, like it still feels like a home.
Yeah.
And that seems like that is another PR angle, is like get the best interior designers and decorators to like have some kind of, let's not make it high art fashion show. Let's make it like, what would you really just want to live in?
Yeah.
Not to make you feel rich, not to be like living in like fucking some architect's dream of a house.
Yeah.
But just like a nice home that you get to kind of choose the interior decor of.
Yeah.
And make that sustainable.
Yeah.
Like that doesn't seem, it seems like not a hard ask. Obviously it is, but like, why don't we do that with our PR right now for the city? Like everyone's making like little fucking, they're making it all look like Apple commercials.
Yeah.
And everything's like white and looks like sterile, like a medical environment. And it's just like, it looks futuristic, but you're right. They haven't helped us in terms of like really showcasing a sustainable like a home or a pad or whatever.
Yeah.
And also they make it seem like it's future cool instead of making it seem like it's just a cool chill spot to hang with your buds. Other than like Firefly, Star Wars did a lot to it because they had to, you know, like the Millennium Falcon has like fucking plush leather and stuff like that. And you're like, oh damn.
Yeah. Like, I would say like in Fifth Element, Corbin Dallas's apartment is really one that
there was some attention.
It's like a tiny home kind of a concept.
Yeah, that's more of the little houses kind of concept. It doesn't feel like it's that sustainable because doesn't he like grab his clothing out of like packages and shit?
Yeah.
But
the idea of an efficiency space like that, and that's everything you need is in there, and it's just behind panels, or you pull it down from the ceiling.
I
or pull it
love
up
the
from ground.
refrigerator shower situation.
Yeah, it's cool.
That's dope.
Yeah,
It
and
just
I think
descends into the ground and becomes the drain.
yeah, and I think if you do concentrate some parts of whatever you're building on the efficiency of the space, then that does give the rest of the world more room to where you can plant trees, where you can plant crops and stuff like that.
Right. They should make it Legos. Like IKEA should do this, where it's like I'm looking at if you go back and rewatch Fifth Element, there's the shot of when he's like pointing the gun at the guy at the door frame, trying to rob him. And there's a shot of everything looks like it's all beige, but everything like on the ceiling and on the walls has like cabinets. And also he has a gun rack that descends from the top. Like what they should do is they should make these compartments that like jut out if you press the button, and then you can custom define what's in them. Yeah. Like that would be like a cool situation where it's like, to me, if we're living in like, all right, we want to mass produce homes for people. And all you have to do is you know, this is everyone's house has like the same square footage or whatever, but you can really customize it in terms of like if you want to go this way with it, because we made it like Legos. Yeah.
You pull up your couch from a plant panel in the floor.
Yeah, or it descends from the ceiling, however you want it, because they made it work that way. You know, I think that limited feeling of liberty is a good...
Yes.
Like, we should focus more on that. I should be hearing more news about companies doing that. I mean, in the same way that IKEA made furniture cheap because they didn't have to deal with like the shipping of a couch. They're just like, how about you make the couch? And we're like, all right. And we did it. And they had their own stylistic approach and all those things that may cause people to want an IKEA thing. The price range is great. And also... everyone hates the aspect of having to build something from IKEA. Yeah. But now you have it, and they're a very successful model because their PR was like, because of all the things that we we made for you, you can actually build your furniture fairly easily with just what you get in the box.
Yeah, and they do have like, there's a lot of videos on YouTube about like space saving hacks or whatever that you can build a bed frame out of IKEA cabinets, and then you'd have like a little stairs up to your bed, but then all the space underneath your bed is used for storage.
Yeah. I get it's one of my favorite things that I get in a YouTube hole is like either the little houses, because I love Murphy beds.
Yeah.
You know, I just love the Tetris of houses.
Yeah, the tiny house stuff is really cool.
The tiny house stuff is cool. I really like it's less sustainable because it's also a car, and I know we weren't going to talk about vessels, but there's some really interesting, like people who take buses and like straight up just take the frame of a bus and like rebuild the bus into an RV and, you know, buy a new engine and stuff like that. And they find clever ways to do heating. They find clever ways to do bathroom and, you know, kitchens and stuff like that. And I always go like, that is super awesome.
Yeah.
Because I'm not that claustrophobic. And that looks like that would be just like, I have everything here. It just feels like a living, breathing kind of event every time I go to, like, if I want to read a book, I open up a drawer that extends out and it's my bookcase, and then I push it down and it's like my pantry and stuff like that. I just love that kind of customizability to some extent. And also the fact that it's all, I can make it all go away and just walk around. Yeah. It's kind of a cool, I like the ideas that people are, or I think that more people should be putting time and effort into making things condense. Yeah. I know in Japan they have
making them modular.
100 square foot like apartments, which sounds absolutely oppressive. I'm sure it is. But they were really clever about how they use that 100 feet. Yeah. You know, like, and you go, oh shit. But yeah, don't live that. That sounds terrible.
I don't want that.
That sounds terrible, because you're just like, I closed up everything, ready to go to bed. Bring out your bed. Now all I can do is sleep. There's literally nowhere else I can go.
But doing all that stuff with modifying and having modular homes or using buses and stuff like that, that's doing the thing that you're talking about earlier, is using the human commodity to and our capacity for innovation to improve literally just junk, like, because nobody's going to use an old bus otherwise, so turn it into a home.
Yeah, we need to get real clever with it.
And that is one of our greatest capacities as humans, is our clever mind.
If it works, it isn't stupid.
Yeah.
Like I see kids in poverty-ridden kids in, I want to say either Brazil or in sub-Saharan Africa. I can't remember. But they were showing how they use like water bottles to make shoes and stuff like that. And it started off as just like, okay, just take some string, tie it around the shoe so that my feet don't touch the ground. And then over a decade, it became like all the kids in the area tried to one up each other with like essentially the new Jordans, you know, and like they were cutting up all the plastic because they just had a ton of plastic, and they like built contours and like added like stuff so it's more comfortable. And they're basically redesigning shoes from like the level of like, if it's just pieces of fabric and plastic, that is your only limitation, and it goes on your foot. And they thought of really innovative stuff. And so obviously necessity is sometimes the mother of invention, but even when it isn't necessary and people don't see how necessary it might be in the future, we should still be focused on it. And it's hard to get people excited about something where it's like, I live on a ranch. What the fuck why would I downsize to an RV? Why would I do that?
Well, look at how cool the RV is.
And he's like, you know what's real cool? Walking around. Just like walking around my apartment, having space. But, you know, it's the goodwill of fellow man. You gotta kind of pay it forward a little bit. That's what I hope, is that there's just a whole lot of paying it forward. And I try to do that as much as I can. Because we all need a little bit more of that.
Yes.
Yeah.
Agreed.
Someone's going to take advantage of that. For me. So,
whoever invents lying in this universe.
They're like, I'm going to get Abe Epperson. He's gullible. Yeah. God. Well, what else do you want to talk about homes or houses?
I think that was pretty much it. Like I said, I did a project about this when I was in environmental science classes, and the one that we were designing was more of like suited to California's more arid climates, that part. And there was solar panels on it, wind turbines, a garden space, and it was all within the space of, I believe, 2 shipping containers. So...
Well, you know me, man. As long as 50% of my square footage is just for sex dungeons, I'm going to be a happy man. Because that's how I spend half my time. So, podcast for a few hours a day, sleep for most of it. Every other hour, sex dungeon. We're all going to need weird sex stuff in the future, I can tell already.
Yep.
I mean, we already need weird sex stuff.
Did you see the thing that went viral of the house with the sex dungeon that was for sale?
Oh, no, I didn't. That's awesome.
Yeah. The realtor was taking pictures of the place, and I think they knew that it was going to go viral if they if they shared the sex dungeon pictures. But it's like a super like nice sex dungeon. Oh, it's nice
sex dungeon. Okay, so it's not like a horrifying sex dungeon.
No, it's like looks really clean, looks really like classy sex dungeon.
That's not how my sex dungeon looks. Mine is all tile. You need to hose it down. Because of all the sex you see.
Yeah.
Many partners.
All that
people I've never met in my life.
Sex juice. Yep.
Yep. I've had very intimate, horrifying moments with strangers in that. And that's what life's all about. You know?
Sure. Making connections.
Making connections. Making deals. Putting stuff up buttholes. All right. That's number 2. That's twice.
Yeah.
Two episodes in a row where we ended on buttholes. Yes. Do they have podcast awards? Am I nominated?
I will try to nominate you if there's a butthole podcast.
I hope there's a fucking like Fields medal in this for me. They're like, and Abe Epperson twice in 2 hours ended a podcast talking about buttholes. I'm impressed.
That's pretty good.
Yep, that's just what we like to do here.
Yeah.
It ain't sci-fi if there ain't a butthole, and that's Philip K. Dick all the way. He said that many times.
Oh, I hope he listens to this someday. I hope he hears it.
Isn't he dead?
Has he? Oh, yeah, I think
I don't
might
even
be.
know.
I don't know.
He's got some problematic
sure
thoughts.
I hope he does hear that, though.
Yeah. It's some problematic thoughts.
All of his work is about buttholes.
Yeah, that's the thing is like when you realize all the cool forefront of sci-fi, there's like several, like Orson Scott Card.
Sure.
Does not like the gays. It's like you realize like, cool, these guys like they fostered these like beautiful versions of what the future may hold. Like I'm just waiting for like Gene Roddenberry to come out and he's like, yeah, he happened to be a white supremacist. I'm like, God damn it. How though? He created the show that had the first interracial kiss on television. And he was just like, yeah, but I'm just scared about all of our old heroes and how science or how the future will not treat them well. Well, I'm not really that worried.
Sure.
I mean, it is, after all, their fault.
That's true. Very true.
Right. Well, now I haven't ended it on a butthole, so Gene Roddenberry's butthole. End of episode.
Bye.
Bye. Hey everybody, hope you enjoyed that. This is Abe, and I just want to let you guys know that we have a store, and you can buy t-shirts, you can buy... Mike's got this rap album.
Rap tracks?
Yeah, he's working on it.
You got rap tracks, you got some audio books on there, and we're adding more all the time.
All a la carte?
Yeah, and we just felt like, aside from me just tweeting, we should just mention it on a podcast so people know. So yeah, you can check out the Small Beans merch store. Please do. We put a lot of work into it, and there's a lot of talented artists who did as well at smallbeans.bigcartel.com. Thank you so much for listening.
Bye.